Welcome to Drinks Coach. I know the scenery is a bit different. It's me, Joe Wadsack, at Vinesack or the Drinks Coach UK. Please subscribe to this on YouTube. Nearly got 1,000 subscribers, maybe it could be the 1,000th. It's been a while, isn't it? I think it's been over a year. I needed to earn some money, and I was determined to not let this channel become an influencer's kind of dumping ground for earning money. So I was kind of dicing with the idea of doing different events and different tastings for various generics. And I did one or two, I think, if you remember, but I want to keep it my authentic judgment, you know, and maybe there's somebody out there who might like to sponsor the channel, you know, actually sponsor the show itself, so that I don't feel like I'm somehow being influenced by money. And here I am at a very nice dining table, accompanied by 4 bottles of wine. So what's today's chit chat about? Well, I just happened to have 4 bottles of wine sent to me. Thank you very much. I think it must have been Sopexa, who sent me some Loire wines. Amongst the wines here, we have a wine I think that's available in Majestic or lots of independents. 2 red wines from the great Loire and Rhone specialist, the Yap brothers, from Miriam, Wiltshire, and then a wine at the end here, which is hugely underrated, which is the demi-sec wines, the medium dry wines of Vouvray, and this one comes from the local wine merchant, Cambridge Wine Merchants, and they all have something very decent to say about wine, really. Where should we start? Well, but let's talk about the Loire in general. So the Loire is a very long river. It's almost as long as the Rhone in France. It starts right out in the Atlantic, near Nantes and Angers, and heads due east all the way to the centre of France, where you do reach the place known as the Central Loire, where the great wines of Sancerre and Pouilly come from. And then the Loire sort of goes towards its source, heading south. Of course, the river flows out to sea. Sorry, which direction I'm going? Yes, it goes out to sea. So it starts actually south of the Central Loire. I think in the mountain range where we get Evian water from, in fact. But it's quite a long river. But it's nice and simple because it's vertical, and then it just goes and then shoots out at 9 o'clock all the way to the sea. Along this particular river, there's an enormous amount of variation in soils. So there is a very large variation in the styles of wine produced. It's difficult to overestimate how important the soils are, and they're not really talked about very much in simple wine chat. But certainly the first one we're starting with, which is Muscadet, made from a grape variety, which I think is probably slightly less humble than people say it is, which is Melon de Bourgogne. That's the name of the grape variety which Muscadet is made from, the melon of Burgundy. And actually, really, in terms of what it can do, I think it very much is a fantastically inexpensive substitute for what are becoming increasingly over-expensive white Burgundies. You know, your basic generic Chablis, let's call that 25 quid, can often not taste nearly as nice as a really stunning Muscadet at 13 or 14 quid. This wine, if you buy it in job lots in Limerick 6, I think in Majestic, it was a tenner. So we're looking at very, very reasonably priced wines indeed. And the interesting thing is that Chablis, although made from Chardonnay, and Muscadet, made from Melon de Bourgogne, both go through a process, often, not always, go through a process where the wine is fermented, put into a tank, and then just left there. The dead yeast cells float to the bottom of the tank, the levure, and it's also called the gross and fine lees of the wine. And the wine is then aged on that muck in the bottom, which adds both a little savoury umami qualities to the wine, but it also produces a lot of breadth in flavour. It stops the wine tasting thin and linear and gives it some bulk, some mouthfeel, some generosity, where in a region which is particularly marginal, there is none. So these wines tend to have, if you buy Muscadet, cheap Muscadet, it's going to be thin and crisp, perfectly acceptable drink in some cases. But you can go for wines which really are, I think, Premier Cru, a Chablis quality. which are Muscadet Surly always, and they'll say Surly on the label to let you know that's happened. And the wine can be left on the lees for anything between 3 to 6 to 9 months to much longer than that in more expensive examples. And in fact, oak is now used in the very premium examples as well. Muscadet was kind of the laughing stock of the 70s. For no good reason. It is fantastic with fish and chips. That's why I'm opening it today, because we're having fish and chips later. But it does age really, really well. I went to a very nice fish restaurant in Reims, the home of Champagne, during the summer holidays, and drank an 11-year-old bottle of Muscadet with a Fruit de Mer platter, and it was unforgettable. It was the most fantastic meal, one of the best I've ever had. Right, so let's start with this, shall we? I've got a small, humble white wine glass for this. It could very easily put in a larger glass. Here we go. This wine is called, it's from the Cabernet family, Cabernet Père et Fils, and it's called Domaine de la Tourmaline. It's quite a prestigious Muscadet already, this. But like I said, prestigious Muscadet might be one of the last bastions of really decent, I think, fine white wine in France, along with Côte d'Iron, by the way, for significantly under 15 quid. So it's Domaine de la Tourmaline. I don't know if you can see that in this light. Not very well lit today. I'm just making do with the pretty room that I've got. So what's it like? Well, it's got sort of a straw colour to it. Again, we've got lots of mahogany and stuff lying around it, so it may look a little darker than it normally would, but it's kind of a pale straw colour. It looks like some actions happened to it, and in this case it's Lee's aging. It's 2022. 2022 is current release. We're recording this in the end of 2023, so the wine's probably spent a whole year on Lee's before it was bottled. Ooh. You stick your hooch in there, and if you're not ready for it, the reaction is, Chablis. It reminds me of Chablis. It smells like really nice sourdough bread with a lifted lemony lime smell almost to it. It's almost like you put sort of lemon rinds, Amalfi lemon rinds into a focaccia, and it's come out of the oven. There is a hint of dried herbs too, maybe dried oregano. It's becoming increasingly like a focaccia. But it has a lovely core. There's also a smell right in the middle of the centre of it, which belies the complexity of the soils that are underneath it. There's a type of ancient rock called gneiss, Gneiss, or gneiss, and there's quite a lot of that in the areas around Sancerre where this wine comes from, and it smells of, for want of a better phrase, wet stones. The stones after a hot, rainy day, and we call this in the phrase in the trade petrichor. We have a name for it. That's the Greek name for it, petrichor, which means warm stones, and it has this lovely stony quality underneath all that. So fruit and bready notes and spice and dried herbs and a few pebbles chucked in the bottom. Lovely ripe wine from a ripe vintage, juicy, mouth-wateringly succulent. Again, you got a little bit of sort of San Francisco salty sourdough coming back at you, a lovely savoury quality, which would be extremely nice with that haddock and batter later. Oh, lovely. And I can just imagine a squeeze of lemon just making that wine even more lively and fresh. But that's a fantastic wine. And I know we haven't done many Muscadets on this channel, and this is the first show for many, many months. But I think that it is fast becoming one of my favourite value wines, and certainly white wines to drink home. Also, I'm crazy about oysters, and nothing in France goes with oysters as well as Muscadet. There we go. Fantastic first wine. Like I said, £10 to £13, depending whether you're buying it in a high street retailer or independent. I think it's, we shouldn't quibble about these things, and we should support the small man. So let's call it 13 quid if you're unlucky, and £10 if you're buying it in a case. Very, very nice wine. So that's a white wine. It's a white wine that comes from, if you've got France like this and you've got the Loire doing that, it's the first port of call, the first wine you come across on the western coast of France, on the Loire, on the north bank. Now we're going to go about halfway down the Loire. So if you've got France like this and it stops in the middle, about halfway along, there are some rather good red wines. Some very, very good red wines. And there are three regions all clumped together, both north and south of the Loire River itself, which are famous red wines. We're producing wines that are, I suppose in their simplest sense, are just joyful, quaffing wines and just fantastic. What the French call vin glu or glugging wines. And they're wines that are just brilliant with a lamb chop and a salad. At the extreme end, there are wines that can age for 20 years and are now, with the amount of warmth that the Loire is getting, which is very similar to the amount of sunshine they used to get in Bordeaux in the 80s, these wines are really kind of contenders of premium Bordeaux. I really think that. So you've got Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil, you've got Chinon. There's a beautiful castle there called Château de Chinon, a beautiful city, medieval city. And you've also got the wines south of the river of Saumur and Saumur-Champigny. Saumur-Champigny is specifically a red wine appellation. Saumur can be red, white, fizzy. Okay, so it could be anything. But Saumur-Champigny is specifically given over to what they call the troglodytic wines of the south bank of the Loire. That is to say, a lot of the wineries are actually built into caves, and you have the wine facilities in the cave and the vineyards on top, which we'll come on to a little bit more in a minute. But we're going to start off with Chinon. Chinon, I think, traditionally over the years has been the most prestigious of the three, but that has turned out, I think, to be a bit deceiving, because I think the very best Saumur-Champigny is world class, the very best Chinon is world class, and the best Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil is world class, and they can go for €100 now, where as I grew up, none of the wines in this region were more than a tenner, but they've discovered greatness amongst the vineyards, and they're being charged for accordingly. So this is the first of two red wines made from Cabernet Franc. Yes, Cabernet Franc is the grape variety of the Loire. It's the premium red variety. There is a little bit of Grollo, which is a slightly less serious variety, less like used to make rosé very much in the region to the west of here in the Anjou. And also you can find a lot of Cotte. Cotte is the Loire name for Malbec, and you know how I feel about Malbec, or if you haven't seen this channel before, I'm not one for big jammy Argentine Malbecs, but very, very well made ones. And in fact, the wines in the Cahors, I think, are hugely underrated, and I think they're world class. And in some cases, you can spend £20 in Cahors and get a wine that tastes like a £60 claret. And I think it's going to have its day. There's not a lot of greatness, not many vineyards in Cahors by comparison to Bordeaux, but the ones that are good deserve a lot more attention. This is Chinon from the family L'Arpentie. It's a lovely modern label. This is 2021, which was a beautiful vintage. On the warmer side of average, but not boiling hot. Very, very elegant fruit and good acidity, as well as lots of ripe fruit. This is the Desbourbes family, and Mr. Robin Yap, Jason Yap's father, who used to sell wine to my mother and dad, has been buying wine from these guys for over 50, I think probably pushing 60 years now. It's only 12.5% alcohol, which is, when you get to my age, is almost a relief, should we say. Some wines can be a lot more potent than that, and we'll see that in a minute, but 12.5% for a glugging red, that's great. I'd rather drink more and not have a headache than drink a big blitzer of a wine. So anyway, this is 100% Cabernet Franc from the estate of L'Arpentie in the Chinon. And if you're talking about the two different styles of Chinon, both the quaffable, juicy, young style, which is, we'll go with fish even, compared to the big, powerful, age-keeping wine, this is very much the former, not the latter. Okay, so give it a little swirl. Such a treat. It just smells like elderberries all crushed up. So there's a kind of a initial really deep red fruitiness, like red currants and black currants, but then it pulls short because there's a real, you can smell a kind of a bitterness brewing. I know you can't smell bitterness, but when I taste this, I know there's going to be a sweet and sour, a little bit of grip. It's going to have that kind of, when you eat cherries, of like really juicy fruit, and then it almost finishes dry because of the extract in the fruit. It's just so easy to drink. I'm drinking this at room temperature in a quite warm house. I'd like to see that served about 16 or 17 degrees. A lot of these wines, like Beaujolais, I prefer to have been drunk slightly chilled. And that's typically how you might get them in a restaurant. I think if you went to a restaurant in London, this particular Chinon would probably be served at 16 or 17 degrees, not 19 or 20. Possibly even lighter. Lovely, juicy, delicious. How much? 16 quid. Go online, Yap Brothers. I think it's just yapbros.co.uk or yap.co.uk. You can look it up on your browser. You'll find it quick enough. And it's about £16.25 or something, which is a perfectly good price for a really stylish, crisp, crunchy, delicious red. We're going to really take it up a level here. Although you've got estates like Clos de l'Echo and Joguet in Chinon, which are wines which go for £20-30. We're now going to slip south of the river to Saumur-Champagny. Saumur-Champagny as a style of Cabernet Franc compared to the serious wines of Chinon. Chinon are quite chunky, quite rich, firm, need time to give of themselves. They can be a bit rugby player when they start, and then they kind of soften out quite quickly. Saumur-Champagny is more poetic, more elegant than that. They're softer, more sensitive, silky. And having said that, this is from Domaine Fiatro, also from Yap. We're going up the price ladder quite a little bit here by about a fiver. That's all. We're going from £16 up to about £21-22. They even sell magnums of this for 50 quid, which is a serious bottle of wine. Both, I think it's 2016 there at the moment. Seriously, a good wine to give to somebody as a gift, because it can be drunk now, it can be kept for another 10 years easily. And a very lovely festive wine for the early spring. You know, for when maybe if you're having spring lamb, that's the perfect wine to celebrate that. And I think it's the kind of wine that I would like to see served more at weddings. I think it's a very fresh spring perfume, lively wine. But this wine is one of a range of wines. Domaine Fiatro is very, very popular in the bistros of Paris. I was there with Emma in the summer going to art exhibitions, and we saw this wine, at least 3 different lists, and I just cracked, and we bought a bottle, and I had some roast chicken with it. Oh, fantastic. And it was just nice to be there thinking about my friends at Fiatro. I haven't seen you all for a long time. Monsieur Frederic, sorry it's been so long, but I'm sure that I'll bring my wife to come and see you soon. So you've got Fiatro, which is a nice crunchy style, a bit like the Chinon that we've just had. And then there's La Grande Vignole, which is a wonderful vineyard in the shape of a circle outside their chateau, which is kind of built into the wall of a cliff, and have a pigeonnier, a pigeonry, and it's just really pretty. And they've got a fantastic bistro there, and it's got this unusual vineyard in front. That's called La Grande Vignole. They sell that separately, I think, and only sell it through Yap. But then there's this. This is an old block of vines which are over 60 years old. This is from a really stunning vintage, which is 2018. And it says Paul Fiatro's father Frederic, Viticulteur Sancerre, and it says Domaine de Fiatro, Saumur-Champagny, Vieille Vigne. The magic words have appeared. Vieille Vigne meaning old vines, which tends to mean something a bit more serious. Wine's been aged in wood. I don't think it's aged in barriques. I think it's aged in larger format, because they want to keep the purity of that lovely Cabernet Franc fruit. But I'm rather excited about trying this. I've been looking at it for days. Let's see how this varies compared to the Chinon. I feel like a newsreader here. I've got an iPad here. No, newsreaders don't have wine, do they? Yeah. Profound, almost chocolatey. I wouldn't go as far as tarry, but like the smell of a fresh leather shoe, that kind of sweet, undergrowthy smell. There's like a black boiling compote of blackberries under there as well. It's got lovely latent brambliness to it. All things which I think are typical of Cabernet Franc, but when ripe like this, you don't get the pyrazines, the greenness, the bell pepper, which is common with Cabernet Franc. Here we've got a wine that is solidly ripe, full of flavour on the nose. Fantastic wine, enormous intensity, lovely freshness. Typically a high acidity for the region, but it's not as high as it would have been in the 70s and 80s. This wine is probably tastes like a wine of great acidity from Bordeaux. I think 2016, I think it's 2014, vintage like 12 even. But this wine has all the body of a big wine. It's rich. It's stuck to the inside of my mouth. Oh yeah, I can see it from here. It's 14.5% alcohol. It certainly feels like that. If I go back to the other wine, it'll probably taste like low alcohol after this. But That's a fantastic bottle of wine. That needs a lump of meat, needs a rump of lamb, maybe a minute steak. It'd be very nice with fatty food. So maybe just a plate of Toulouse sausages or some bangers, or cold cuts, charcuterie, things like that. Lovely bit of sweet charcuterie, saucisson would make that wine shine. Anyway, that's a fantastic bottle of wine. And for £22, Yap Brothers strike again. This is one of the great sort of secret wines, I think, of the entire region, and it's absolutely fantastic. Shouldn't be a secret, bloody fantastic. Okay, let's go on to the last wine. I'm trying to keep these a little bit shorter, these chaps. We're on to Domaine Vouvray. Vouvray, so try and say that when you're pissed. Domaine Vouvray. It says medium dry white wine on the back. I know this is sold by Hal Wilson down the road at Cambridge Wine Merchants, one of the exceptional independent wine merchants of this country. They do very, very well with their fortifieds at Christmas as well. So you're looking for Port Madeira, they're the ones to talk to. This wine's delicious. This is a wine made from, I suppose people will argue about this, but the king grape variety of the Loire for me. The Central Loire, obviously famous for making Sauvignon Blanc. Muscadet made from Melon de Bourgogne. But the one grape variety we haven't really addressed, let's leave Chardonnay aside. There's plenty of Chardonnay there, but that's kind of an interloper really. It's Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc is a grape variety that's been grown here for many, many, many hundreds of years. It's a grape variety which basically is the engine room of fine individual wines in South Africa. Obviously, for those people that are familiar with me know that I judge a wine competition in South Africa every year. I'm very fortunate to do so. And the South Africans have been producing oak-aged, barrel-fermented, very old vine Chenin Blancs recently, which have created almost a new category of fine wine. And our wines are easily compete with the finest Burgundies and New World Chardonnays. But Chenin Blanc is a diverse beast. It can be used in many, many different ways. It makes very good sparkling wine. Not often 100% Chenin, but the wines of Sancerre, the fizzy ones, the wines of Crémant de Loire, they'll have some Chenin in them. In fact, even Blanquette de Limoux in the south of France, near Carcassonne, when they make a finer one, which is Crémant de Limoux, Chenin Blanc is often the first stop for putting a bit of poshness into the wine. But Chenin Blanc is a great variety which has marked acidity. When it's young, it tastes of apple, quince. 2 or 3 years in, starts to honey up a little bit. It tastes quite like a dry honey extract. And that nuance of honey is very Moorish. It makes your mouth water when you smell it. Then there are lots of complexities depending on what the soil it's grown on. But Vouvray, which is again very much near the area we've been talking about with Chinon, the red wine, is just around that area. So you've got Anjou to the west, and you've got Savinière, Jasnière, Anjou, and Saumur. They're all areas which can produce Chenin Blanc in the white, and they make Cabernet Francs where allowed in with red. So I'm just going to open this. It's inexpensive. This is on the shelf, Cambridge Wine Merchants, Bridge Street, £12.95, I think this is. So with a bit of discount, it's probably pushing a tenner. What is this? It's 2022, so you won't see much development here. But these wines are inexpensive and they have fantastic versatility. Because some of the wine is left unfermented, they're only 11.5% alcohol. It's not 9 or 8. They don't taste really thin. They still taste like wine. But a degree of that wine, or possibly 2. So between 11.5% and the wine being 13%, let's say that's about 35 to 40 grams of residual sugar. That's not uncommon, about 30 grams. So this wine is not, when they say demi-sec, that sounds like half dry, but it's more like demi-doux. It's not half sweet, I think, or what the French also describes as a vin tendre, or tender wine. Let's have a look at this. Oh, why is it so pretty? They're so pretty. I read that a lady called Tamlin Curry, who writes for the great Jancis Robinson, described this as, was it sage leaves dipped in honey or something? And I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. And yes, there is a dried herb core to the wine, and sage is absolutely it. I think sage and honey, when I think about the combination, probably works extremely well. I might experiment with that in some kind of cuisine, I don't know. But it has a smell which has got a little bit of stoniness or chalkiness, because as I said, the soils are very complex around here and very manifest in the wines. I'm going to call it a very lightly dipped toffee apple. There's a kind of cooked apple with just a hint of caramel around it at the moment. Penetrating, lovely precise acidity. Lots of length, because that residual sugar helps to hold the wine in the palate. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about what other fruits it reminds me of, but definitely quince, maybe dried apple. Very nice. And this wine seems quite latent and light, but these wines age for 5 to 10 years and become really wonderful and interesting. But also, they go with foods that you wouldn't normally be able to match wine with. Amazing with really sweet, spicy beef ribs and pork back ribs. If you like your barbecue food, this is a fantastic juxtaposition to that, because it's got the sweetness that it doesn't fall over, because you've got sweetness in the marinade, but also the acidity cuts you all that fat, and it freshens the palate. So Vouvray and beef ribs are amazing, straight out of the barbecue. Well, there we go. We've got 4 wines. 1 Muscadet, Melon de Bourgogne. Let's reiterate, that was about £12, maybe slightly less. Chinon from La Ponty, a light, quaffable, young drinking Chinon for about 16 quid. For about £22, we've got Domaine Fiotro's Old Vine, top cuvee, absolute smasher. 2018, just starting to drink. And Vieux Vouvray, 11.5% alcohol, 2022, 100% Chenin. Lovely. There are a few holes there. Maybe we'll fill them with another show soon. See you next time.